Oh yeah. Look out my three C's: coding, crocheting, and chilling. Alrighty. We're now live, and I also got the stream up for you guys as well, so you can see the thingy. Alrighty. Alright, welcome back. Session 7, 7 weeks in. We're killing it. Last week we did database conversations, and now we're going to move into some scheme design, embedded and reference, all that stuff. Um, let's see. Blah, blah, blah. I'm skipping a lot of this stuff. It's just kind of filler stuff. I feel like we already did the check-in before we came in, but how's everyone else been? Everyone else having a good week? Fair. I got a nice little bit of sun today. Went out to the pool and chilled for a little bit. And yeah, tonight is gonna be one of the things that like we all dread from boot camps. And it's just it's gonna be, deployment. Let's see. We've been building, this nice warm bowl on like our localhost 3000, 3001. Everything works. Um, you know, we refresh the page, it runs, it's beautiful, and then someone says, "Can I see it?" And you realize you have absolutely no idea how to show them. And that's deployment. And tonight we're going to pull back some of the curtains on that and kind of discuss like how it happens, what some of the tools are, and how to stop, being scared of it. Because I know one of the code jams I did, it was definitely a little scary, like having to figure out how to get everything deployed and things like that, and ready for the judges. So, um, and like, there's definitely different ways to do it. Like I know if you're just deploying like front end, you can typically get away with just doing it on GitHub pages, but if you start wanting to like have a back end, there's a couple other steps. Um, so yeah, what deployment actually means end to end. So we're going to start with the honest definition. What does deploying an app actually mean? Deployment is the process of taking your code off your machine and putting it somewhere that anyone with a browser can reach it, and that's it. But there's a lot hiding inside of that sentence. When your app runs on your laptop, it runs because your laptop has Node installed. Your environment variables are set, your dependencies are installed. Your database is running, your ports are open. Everything is already configured. You didn't think about any of that because you already set it up once, and then you move on right at the beginning. Anytime you have issues, you just typically, hit a little npmi, install, and it will typically clear out any of those node issues. When you deploy, you start from scratch on a machine you've never touched that knows nothing about your project. And your job is to make sure your machine has everything your app needs to run. Um, so, couple steps to it. Step one, build your code. If you're using like React or Vite, which I know a lot of us use, or any front end framework, you don't just copy your source files to a server. You run a build command first, npm run build, and that produces a dist folder full of optimized minified static files. Um, that's what gets servers. That's what gets served to users, not your source code. Your source code is for the development. The build output is for production, and those are different things. Um, Step two, put it somewhere. That somewhere could be a cloud virtual machine, a managed hosting platform, a CDN, a counter. There are a lot of different options, and we'll cover that in a bit. Um, let's see. Yep. I want to make sure I'm flipping to the right screen. So I try to add a couple more like tabs instead of just like a single tab for a little thingy for you guys. Um, Step three, you want to serve it. something has to listen for requests and respond with your files or your API responses. On the front end, that's usually like nginx or CDN Edge node. On the back end, that's your Node Express server or whatever runtime you're using. Step four, point a domain at it. DNS maps a human readable name to an IP address. When someone types your URL, DNS says that means go to this machine. You set that up once in the domain registrar and it propagates. And a final step, you just want to keep it running. Servers crash, processes die. You need something watching your app, a process manager, a health check, a restart policy, so that when something goes wrong at 2 a.m., it comes back up on its own, not having to, try to figure out who's going to be awake at that time. That's deployment in 5 steps. Everything else is just details inside of those steps. Um, so have you guys has anyone tried have you guys tried any type of deployment before? CJ, have you deployed anything before? Because you finished the class, right? But yes, probably like Netify or something, or Vercel. Yeah, maybe like Vercel or something like that. Yeah, we'll hit environment variables. Uh, This one can be a big one. It's one of the most common ways bootcamp devs accidentally expose sensitive information or break their apps when we deploy. Um, it's your environment variables. We're going to start with the basic question. What do you guys think an environment variable is? Got you. Give it a shot. Yeah, so environment variable is a value that your application reads from the system it's running on, rather than hard coding it into your code. Think of it like think of it like a setting that changes depending on where your app is running. Most common ones we will deal with um, MongoDB underscore URI. Let's see if I have some of these in here. Yeah, right here, URI. Um, JW secret. Um, so your URI, that's going to be your database connection string. Your JSON web token secret, that's your secret key for signing tokens. Port, what port your server runs on, and of course your API keys from third-party services. Um, and They matter because if you hard code the URI in your code and push that to GitHub, your database, your database credentials are now public. Anyone can see them, anyone can access your data, and that's a real sticky security incident. Environment variables solve this by keeping secrets out of your code base. Your code just says, const URI process.env.mongo URI. Um, put in that envelope. That in that actual value lives somewhere that isn't version controlled. Uh, Locally use that .env file, the environment folder. Um, you've probably seen, I'm sure you guys have probably seen this when you go to deploy or as you start to set up environments. I know you were saying Dylan was kind of getting all of that stuff set up, and I heard him talking about the env folder the other day. Um, you know, and that and that's exactly where you're going to put your secrets. And then you add that to your .git ignore. So that way, when your app reads those values, that way your app reads those values when it starts, but it doesn't, deploy publicly on your GitHub. Yeah, pretty much anything you don't want to see be seen publicly, you can put it in that dot get ignore file, and that's it's always going to be like, okay, cool, yep, not going to use it. Or, I'm not going to show it publicly. It doesn't mean that it's going to ignore this stuff. It's just going to ignore it by not adding it to GitHub. Yeah, got you. Um, so pretty much, yeah. So when you deploy, you don't copy the env file. Instead, you set environment variables directly in your hosting platform, in the dashboard or via the CLI. Um, every major platform has a way to do this. GCP, Render, Railway, Vercel, they all have environment variable section. Your app reads them the exact same way, progress.env, Mongo URI, but now the value is coming from a hosting environment instead of a file. Uh, uh, and then let's see, another thing. Um, different environments need different values. Your local Mongo DB URI points to your dev database. Your production URI points to your production database, and those are normal. Those are expected, and you want to keep them separate. Um, I have accidentally committed a .env file once before when when I had started that internship. It was not it was not ideal. Thank God we had just started and like it was all just the like template shit, but like it was just like it was still like learning about that the hard way. It could have been a lot worse than what it was, you know what I'm saying? Let's see. And then a good, yeah, interview question. If asked, how do you handle secrets in a API? Secrets live in environment variables, never in source code. Locally, I use env. That's that's in get ignore. In production, I set them through the platform's dashboard, render, whatever. The app reads them via process env at runtime. Good little. And of course, I'll make sure I post this file in the resources for you guys as well. And then the mermaid sheet's already in there for you guys as well. Um, hosting options, some of the trade-offs. Um, so we're going to talk about where we are actually putting the app, because there's a lot of different options, and the right answer depends on kind of what you're building and what we're optimizing for. And we're going to break this down into two categories: managed platforms and raw infrastructure. Oh, excuse me, sorry. Got the yachties. Um, Managed platforms. Those are services that handle most of the infrastructure work for you. You give them your code, they handle the servers, networking, scaling, SSL certs, all of that kind of stuff. That's going to be like your Vercel, which is like best in class for like front end stuff. If you have like Next.js apps or a static React build, Vercel is generally hard to beat there because their free tier is solid. I've used it before. Deploys happen automatically when you push to GitHub, automatically getting updated. The CDN is global out of the box. The trade-off, it's not great for persistent backend servers or long-running processes. Like was getting emails saying like, "Hey, your server's going to shut down in X amount of time." But at least it was able to get up and running for the short amount of time that I needed it. Um, you got Renderer, great for full stack. You can deploy Node Express backends, static front ends. I'm pretty sure we used it with Triple Ten on one of the final projects. Um, it's a database, all on the same platform. Free tier spins down after interactivity, which means cold starts, which is annoying for demos. Paid tier is pretty reasonable though. And then you got Railway, similar to Render, arguably better developer experience, slightly more optimized. or opinionated, good for merge stack apps, free tiers limited for by usage hours. So like there are a bunch of different ones out there. Like I said, I kind of like Vercel, especially with the front end stuff, and renderer. I've used both of those. Um, those platforms are pretty, really great for getting something live quickly. They they're abstract. They abstract away a lot of complexities. So if you're building a portfolio project and you want to deploy it today, you can really just start there and it'll get it up and going pretty fast. Um, Raw infrastructure is the other side of this, managing your own servers, GCP, Google Cloud Platforms. This is what we used for WTWR. Um, we spun up a Linux virtual machine, SSH key into it, install Node, configure nginx, set up SSL with certbox to manage your own process with PM2. Um, you know, Way more work, way more control. You learn exactly what's happening at every layer. It is it is literally raw. The trade-off is obvious. Raw infrastructure takes longer to set it up, more expertise to maintain it. It does make you a better engineer when you manually configure nginx and trace to a 502 error back to a misconfigured proxy pass directive. You start to understand what render is doing for you behind the scenes. So, it is a great way to start learning things, but it is a very extensive process. Um, a managed platform for portfolio projects is, top tier if you want to just deploy something really fast. Whereas, raw infrastructure, even just once, to actually understand what deployment means, that experience is absolutely irreplaceable. I mean, it is a bit of a but, but it is definitely doable. And I'm pretty sure you'll be getting to it pretty soon with you starting to wrap up some of those classes or some of the projects. Let's see, we'll move on to nginx, reverse proxies. Um, so pretty much here, a reverse proxy is a server that sits in front of your application and forwards requests to it. Instead of users talking directly to your Node app, they talk to nginx, and nginx decides where to send the request. It matters for a couple of reasons. SSL termination, you want your site on HTTPS, but managing SSL certifications, um, managing those can be pretty annoying. Um, nginx can handle SSL at the entry point and then forward plan HTTP traffic to your node process internally. However, your app doesn't need to know anything about SSL. So pretty much, SSL termination. Reason two, serving static files efficiently. Um, Engine is extremely good at servicing static files, way better than Node or Express. So you let Engine serve your React build files directly and only proxy requests that need to hit your backend. Um, Third one, let's see if I have it in here. Yeah, here we go. Third one, um, routing on a domain file, our WTWR, when we started to use like the lily pad or whatever, name you chose to go with that for your routing site, because I'm pretty sure they gave us like a linked site where we can go choose whatever we wanted and to just see what was available, right? And they have an entire sprint that's just like straight up routing. It goes, it is the fastest sprint. Yeah. Yeah, no worries. So pretty much engine can say like any request to an API goes to port 3001, which is would be your node server, and any other request gets served from the front end build directory. One domain, two different things. Uh, let's see. Here we go. Here's a simplified nginx config that does exactly that. Let's see. Where's the line? I think this is different than what I have in my notes. But the try files, the URI index, HTML line, yes, yeah, it's definitely different, yeah, because I have a different HTML line running. I think they're running it under location now. Yeah, they're using a try index URL index. Well, anywho's. Um, so pretty much these lines are important for your React router. It means that someone navigates directly to, your dashboard and doesn't get a 404, an error 404, page not found. It serves, like your index.html, tells it where to go, lets React Router handle the routing client side. When you use like renderer or Vercel, they're doing that stuff for you, whereas like nginx or the equivalent running somewhere where you can't see it. It's that behind the scenes, like the things that you can't see your computer doing. Um, Understanding how it works means you're not confused when things start to break. You know where to look. You know what to Google. Um, and we set like we were just talking about. We set a lot of this stuff up for our WR project. They really walk us through that stuff. I did feel like it was like one of the easier chapters as we like encroached into like front/back end work. Um, but CI and CD basics. So we'll hear this, like during a lot of different interviews, depending what we're going for, full stack or just front end or back end. Um, we'll be asked about it, and we need to be able to, tell them exactly what it means. CI stands for continuous integration, whereas your CDs stand for continuous delivery, or continuous deployment, depending on who you want to talk to, but either or works. So in plain English, continuous integration or CIs is the practice of frequently merging code changes into a shared branch with automated tests running on every merge to catch problems early. The integration is integrating your code with everyone else's code. The continuous is doing it often, not once a week. Continuous delivery or deployment is the practice of automatically shipping that code somewhere after it passes tests. Delivery means it's ready to be deployed with a manual trigger. Deployment means it deploys automatically. Putting them together, every time you push code, a pipeline kicks off automatically. It runs tests. If they pass, it builds your app. If it succeeds, it deploys to your server. If anything fails, it stops and notifies you. You're going to start getting a lot of, I think that's like project, I think 16 or so, where you'll be working with like Postman and things like that, and you'll start getting some of those kickbacks. Um, let's see. Oh yeah, then you definitely know. Yeah, because I think yeah, it is Sprint 12 and 13 that I'm pretty sure you use Postman. Yeah, and you start running tests, and then 13 they don't clear out all of the 12 tests, so you're going to fail half of the file, but the other half will pass, and they don't tell you that, but you're supposed to recognize it. It's yeah. Silly, silly. Yes, as long as you get the updated 13 tests in there, you should be fine. But like the 12 test will be sitting there in the background, so they're gonna fail. Just, but you'll be alright. Yeah, no worries. Um, so we've already used some of the simplest versions of CIs and CDs. When we've connected to our GitHub repo, to Vercel or to renderer, push to main, it deploys. That's CD with basically no CI. A real CI CD pipeline looks more like you push to GitHub, lint check, run tests, build the app, deploy to staging, manual approval or auto, and then deploy to production. Um, Give you a little boom boom. The tool most commonly used for this is GitHub Actions. You write a YAML file that lives in your repo at GitHub Workflows deploy.yaml, um, and GitHub runs it on every push. It's a minimal example. Actually, this would be more of a minimal example because this would be your deploy. This is your YAML. But yeah, I guess it didn't have Python. But yeah, this is actually what it would look like, a minimal example. Um, and why it matters right now is because during when we're interviewing, do you have CI or CD experience? Is that and re what they're really asking us is, do you understand automated pipelines? Can you set one up? Do you understand why teams use them? The answer is yes, because now you do. Um, yeah, continuous integration and continuous delivery or deployment. Here you go. CI, continuous integration. So automated deployment after CI passes and then automated testing on every push. So some of the benefits. Mm. Common deployment failures and how to debug them. Um, Hell yeah. And then also before I get into this one, so next week I'm gonna try to jump backwards and kind of go over some application, where to kind of start getting more practice and some more like um, interactive shit for all of us to kind of like really build on. So I'm gonna try to really pull out some stops next week. Uh, Common deployment. Let's see. So last section on this, and this one can't is actually practical. These are things that will bite us in the ass, and we're gonna go over how to handle them. So failure number one. It works locally, but not in production. 9 out of 10 times, this is an environment variable, um, something your local NVA file has that you forgot to set in your hosting platform. You just have to check your environment vars first and always. Um, Second most common, a dependency. That's in dev dependencies that you actually need at runtime. That's a package .json problem. Move it to dependencies. Let's see how many pages I have on this one. Um, Failure number two, a 502 bad gateway. That's nginx telling us that it tried a proxy request to our backend and it got nothing back. Either a node server isn't running or it's running on a different port than nginx expects. You want to check your PM2s list or your PS aux. Um, you know, Essentially you want to check your nginx configs proxy passport and make sure that they are matching. Um, third one, React router routes, returning 404. You deployed your React app and direct navigation to dashboard gives you a 404. This is the try files issue from the engine section. You need try files in the HTML in your location block. Without it, nginx tries to find the file at the path, doesn't find one, and 404s. Um, Four, cores errors in production. Your API is running, your front end is running, but fetch calls are getting blocked. Cores is set up for localhost, but not for your production domain. You want to go to your express cores config, add your production domain to allow origins. Um, Fifth one, SSL cert expired or not set up. Browsers will block our sites if the cert is expired or missing. If you're on a GCP managing your own certs, use certbot. Set up auto renewal certbot renew. Try run to test it, then open it to cron. On a managed platform, it'll handle it for you. Um, just some pretty basic general debugging stuff. Always check our logs, checking the console, checking the network tab, making sure that that everything is working and coming back with the proper requests and the proper numbers that they should be. Um, you know, like what is our stat, like, what is the good code that we everybody wants to see? What's that status code? Yeah. 10 points to Slytherin. uh she she's Slytherin. Yeah. I'm Griffin. Yeah, there was like a whole sesh on it. uh, Long story short, we all end up on Pottermore and went through all of our wands, Patronuses, and the whole nine. uh, yeah, I'm just gonna go. My legs are broken. I like chocolate. I feel like that'll be a great one to go. But yeah, that wraps up debugging. I mean, the errors are pretty much always, just always check your logs. Logs are going to be your best friend. Clickety. Um, yeah, and I'll just kind of go with closing statements while you finish taking up notes. So that way we can at least get the YouTube stream turned off, and then we can all just kind of shoot the shit. Um, yeah, that was session 7. A lot of it was a lot of stuff was covered tonight. Again, like last week. I'm going to try to make next week a lot more interactive. So hopefully, more people are here next week. If they're not, all everything will be getting posted in the resource tab again. I've been trying to use Claude to kind of help me design and make like little like flashcard type games and things like that to not only expand my knowledge of like different methods that can be used, but to also start trying to get better with application. So like, like some of the leak code problems, they can seem a bit difficult at the beginning when you don't have much application progress, especially their easy problems. So, trying to use Claude to help me generate problems that are a bit easier just to get a more functional, you know, just a much more functional, repetitive, what's the word for it? Feel for this kind of thing. So that way it's like, like the back of your hand, second nature. So when you do start to look at some of these problems, you're like, dude, I already know, like, okay, what kind of if statement or what kind of for loop or what kind of, how could I, hash map through this type of problem? And, so I'm really going to try to see what I can do to kind of open up the doors to really get our application down. So when we get into some of these technical interviews, obviously we're going to be fucking kicking ass and taking names with, being confident with how we talk about this stuff with all of these meetings now. But, being able to actually show your code and how to, talk about why you're writing it that way is, two completely different animals. And I want to kind of try to start to bridge that gap for us. So, um, that being said, what deployment actually means, end to end, environment variables and why it matters for security, real trade-offs between managed platforms and raw infrastructure, um, what nginx is doing and why it exists, CDIs, CDs from first principles, and how to debug the most common failures. If there's one thing that we should take away from, the deployment is not magic. It's just running our app on someone else's computer. That's it. Once we understand that, everything else is just details. Best way to learn this, deploy something, pick a project, and you're about to start getting hit with all that, so just strap in, I should say. um, you know, you'll be picking a platform, you'll learn how to ship it. It is a bit of a beast. Like, you know, I I feel like the course and they move through it very quick. Like, you're watching the videos, you're trying to get just trying to get through it because of their ridiculous deadlines. But once you start to build those like little things, or if you guys want, like I said, we'll start doing little code jams. That will give you, an opportunity to like try to deploy on sites other than what they give you. And it really starts to open up your eyes of like, holy shit, okay, I need to Google what I need to do next because I'm so lost, but then once you do it, you're like, dude, that was so easy. That was actually pretty simple, so yeah. Because I don't think they had us, no, they did have us do that, yeah. Did you just deploy the front end using GitHub pages then? Ah, tight. I like that. Yeah, like little tiny little project competitions. Oh, we're still live. Yeah, I just saw this. Let me read it. Uh, well, there's another person in here too. You something, you dot dot dot. Underdog 22. Oh, okay. Yeah, for some reason it just says, yeah, you dot dot for me. Yeah, who's that guy? Fucking weirdo, just lurking. Oh, jeez. Well, shit. Yeah, I mean that's about all I got, on today's meeting, guys. So with that, here, let me wrap that up and turn off the YouTube stuff real fast. Stop streaming. Yeah.